that one. All right. Well, you sent me another article written by a good friend of the show, Dustin Baker.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
4 ways for the Vikings to spend their $17 million in remaining cap space before the season starts.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, last week we talked about a different one of Dustin's articles, some of the biggest losers on the Vikings after the draft who may be in a worse spot after that. And I liked that conversation. People seem to like that conversation. So, yeah, I figured we'd keep it going. Definitely, if you're listening to this, please do yourself a favor. Go check out that article on VikingsTerritory.com. It's a few days old at this point, and we're recording on Monday the 13th. So by the time you listen to us, it might be a couple more days old, but it's still a good read, and I don't think, unless they sign one of these guys before you get to that article, it's not going to get out of date. But yeah, Dustin lists out, or he explains the Vikings currently have around $17 million in cap space right now. And importantly, that's before they sign the rest of their draft picks. So that's going to change up a little bit. J.J. McCarthy is going to get something like a 4-year with a 5th-year option, but it's going to be worth $25-ish million. So I don't know what the guarantee is going to be on that. Probably most of it. But however that breaks down, they've got a decent chunk of change to be able to go out and sign a guy that's requisite of a small, decent chunk of change. So Dustin listed out 4 players that could be good fits for the team and would probably cost a little bit of money, but not breaking the bank. Jared Goff, $180 million guaranteed type of money. So what do you think? You read the article, did you?
Excuse me. Yes, I did read the article. And I was kind of surprised, actually, by the last 2. We can start with the first 2. The first 2 don't seem that out of reach, I don't think, for the Vikings. The second 2 are a little intriguing to me, to say the least. So, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
This IPA, it's getting to me.
It's getting you. So I think in the article, Dustin does kind of list out in order from like least to best favorable options for the Vikings. So the least, but still would be a good choice, he lists out Hunter Renfrow, former Raiders wide receiver. And he listed him out because he's currently a free agent, 28 years old right now, so theoretically has a couple years left at least in the tank. Renfrow had a pretty good 2021 season, I think over 1,000 yards receiving, but since then has been kind of iffy, not quite as up to par with that 2021 season. So there's something there. He has flashed and shown that he's got something. If you play him right, if you give him a decent quarterback and the right system, he could be a really good wide receiver 3, which is what Dustin's saying. So he might be the cheapest of the options on this list. I'm just guessing, but it would still be good because currently the wide receiver 3, I think, is Brandon Powell for what it's worth on the Vikings. So Hunter Renfrow, I tend to agree. I'm going to go ahead and say I tend to agree with all of these choices, but I'm interested to see your opinion on the last 2.
Yeah, I think Hunter Renfrow is a good option. I don't know why Brandon Powell isn't a good option at that wide receiver 3 position. I know he's a little undersized, but man, he had a great season with Minnesota.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, but I heard Dustin say on one of the things he's on, and he's probably said it a few times, if it weren't for Brandon Powell's game-clinching touchdown catch in the Josh Dobbs Atlanta Falcons game, we would all have a way lesser opinion on Brandon Powell.
That's probably true.
And not for anything that he did poorly, it's just that he's got that highlight, heavenly catch that won the game for us, almost as exciting as Josh Dobbs' whole play in that game. So yeah, that is skewing. I think we would all, if we sat down and thought about it, that game, that catch is probably skewing our thoughts on him a little bit. But it's not like he's garbage outside of that catch,
That was his only touchdown of the season. But he was still targeted quite a bit, 44 targets with 29 catches. And I don't know, he has that, like, that aura about him, almost that on the field presence, kind of like we were talking about with Jimmy Kleinsasser a little bit ago. Like,
Whoa,
yeah,
careful, man, careful. You're not putting him in Jimmy's era.
It's a little bit of a apples to oranges comparison.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wide receiver to fullback.
I know what you're saying though.
But he has that, like, come on guys, let's go kind of mentality, and I don't know. I like Brandon Powell a lot, and I would be perfectly fine if the Vikings brought him back.
Well, he's back. They signed him back. He's on the team.
And if he were the wide receiver 3, I guess is what I was trying to finish. And if the other guys didn't usurp him for that title, obviously 1 and 2 are pretty well covered. That wide receiver 3 position is definitely still kind of up in the air at this point, but JJ, Jordan Addison, they've got 1 and 2 kind of locked down. I don't think, barring catastrophic injury, we see anything different that way. But Hunter Renfrow wouldn't be a bad addition, and yes, he's cheap and proven that he can be productive.
Yeah,
for sure.
Next on the list, old friend Dalton Risner. I don't know how he's not on a team. Not only just not with the Vikings, I don't know how somebody hasn't picked him up. He doesn't seem like a jerk off the field, which granted, you never really know anybody. And is it possible he's putting on a good persona in social media and in locker room interviews or whatever to make us think he's a good guy when really he's not? Sure, I guess that's possible, but I don't think that's the case. I think he actually is a good dude. And he's tweeted out, like, I'm not looking to be the highest paid guard in the league or anything, which we're not in negotiations with him. We don't know what he and his agent are asking for, but it feels like he should be on a team right now. Feels like he should be a Viking right now, but it definitely feels like 31 other teams should have picked him up. He played well last year. Like, he got Ezra Cleveland traded out of the team. Like,
well, and his flaw is that he's not a run blocker. But we didn't have a run game to speak of anyways last year, so that's not really his fault. And we didn't really get to see him run block. I mean, you can't blame the running game on him solely. And I think we, as Vikings fans, we would all agree that Alexander Mattison was not the answer at running back 1. And you can't blame that on your guard. You just can't.
Yeah.
So I'm shocked as well that he's not signed anywhere, and shocked that the Vikings haven't brought him back. I feel like he is another just team guy all around, and even more so than Brandon Powell. Like, I watched plenty of his locker room interviews. I watched plenty of game footage, and I even spliced together a great little montage of his, like, foot kicking. Like,
yeah, check that out on TikTok.
It was awesome. But looking at the guards that we have currently, you have Blake Brandel,
who is probably penciled in right now. If they were playing a game right now, he'd be the starter at left guard.
And then you have Ed Ingram, of course, at right guard.
Yep.
And then you have 2 rookies. You have Henry Boyd and you have Tyrese Robinson. That's
as far as listed out as guards.
That is
specifically.
Those are the 4 guards currently on the roster. It's May, so that's going to change for sure.
Maybe, yeah.
But man, I don't know. If you're Kwesi, you have to be on the phone regularly with Dalton Risner's agent, who I know he just hired a new one.
Yeah, not terribly long ago, he switched over to Drew Rosenhaus, who is, maybe he's got more of a jerk persona, but he gets guys signed. Like, he does deals.
Yep.
Teams are not afraid to do deals with him. I'm sure there are a handful of current Vikings, that employ Drew Rosenhaus as their agent. Like, he just gets deals done. So Dalton Risner will play in the NFL this season. And if he doesn't, like, what in the world? What do the teams know that we don't? He will play in the NFL. Hopefully the Vikings sign him. Or if they don't, I'd love to say, like, can you believe how great Blake Brandel has been playing? Like, that's amazing. A Pro Bowler. Like, that's what I'd love to see, but I don't know. Dalton Risner played pretty darn well. I'm comfortable with him.
So anyways, of the 4 in this list, he's, to me, the most surprising, and I would put him higher.
As the one you'd most want the Vikings to sign?
Yes.
Okay. I could see that.
Given how he played last year, given just not just the on the field performance, but the off the field stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of respect for the guy, and I want him to be a Viking.
Yeah,
I want to root for him.
Good things happened for the offensive line when Dalton Risner became the starter.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, I think that's all we need to know. So the next one is a guy who, admittedly, I guarantee I've heard his name because he was a Packer for a few years, but he's bounced around a little bit. But I never would have thought to bring his name up before reading this article. It's a guard, and Dustin listed him out as just offensive guard, so I wonder if he has some flexibility there. Guard Greg Van Roten. I'm going to go with Roten. There's
Roten
only one
sounds
T.
better.
Yeah. It's 34 years old, a guard who has bounced around the last few years. I think last year he was with the Jets, maybe. I might be wrong on that. I know he's played for the Jets and the Raiders and the Panthers and obviously the Packers for a few years. But he's still getting it done. Like, he's still a serviceable starter-level offensive lineman. Yeah, he's 34 years old. But at this point in the year, if you're signing a guy, you're not looking for somebody to be on your team for the next 10 years. You're looking to fill some position needs. And, 34 is not ancient. It's pretty old for, like, a running back, but offensive lineman, if you're healthy, you can still play for quite a few years. So I don't know. You said you were a little iffy on the next two guys. So.
I'm iffy on the next two mostly because of their age. And you mentioned it. 34, and then the next player who will remain nameless until we get to him is 37.
Yeah.
But 34 and 37, that's still on the upper edge of things for NFL players. And so that's what concerns me. Hunter Renfrow, Dalton Risner, they're a little younger. Mm-hmm. They've got a little bit more life in them. And what I don't want is I don't want to go through all of this turnover year after year. And I understand that there's some of that, and that's just how the NFL works in 2024. That's just a natural byproduct of the way that the league is set up. I'm not oblivious to that, but I'm an idealist. I'm a pie in the sky kind of thinker. I'm always thinking positively, optimistically, and I don't want to sign these cheap 1-year contracts and then watch the guys leave. Like, you and I both, we kind of form attachments to these players because we watch them play, because we watch every single game. And I don't know. For the same reasons that I want Dalton Risner back because he was so awesome to watch last year.
Yeah.
I don't want to sign another guy to take the same position, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you sign Greg Van Roten, you're probably definitely not signing another guard.
And you have it here, and I know Dustin covered this in his article too. Yes, he would probably be an upgrade even over Brandell, who's already signed to a contract and will be playing for the Vikings next year. Mm-hmm. And he might even start over Brandell. Brandell might be the depth guy that comes in behind.
Yeah.
Roten.
I would assume that if they sign this guy or Dalton Risner or anybody who has more experience.
And this is why I would make a terrible GM, because I'm not thinking about the on-the-field product this year. I'm thinking my heartstrings are attached, and I'm thinking about the legacy for my kids, and I'm like, I don't know. I think about all the wrong things when it comes to signing players.
So I will say, if we take a step back, I have the same thought process. Like, I want them to have homegrown guys and keep signing these guys and keep the core together for year in and year out forever. I want every player to be like Harrison Smith and just stay with the team every year, or Jimmy Kleinsasser, However, the realistic thought process we should have is every team, if they're even the best, voted number 1 or number 2 in the NFLPA, like best place to play or whatever, even those teams, just that's where the salary cap comes in. You can't always keep signing guys over and over and keep guys forever and ever. This isn't the New York Yankees. So you are gonna have some of those guys. You're gonna have Harrison Smith. You're gonna have a guy who hopefully in Justin Jefferson, he's gonna be the hyped up guy that we buy our kids his jersey. You're gonna have, Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill. Hopefully, if JJ McCarthy works out, like that, those kinds of guys, you're always going to have those guys that stay on the team. They are the one that the team, he's the highest selling jersey for that team. So because of that, you're going to need every once in a while, there's going to be, hey, it is a revolving door at guard right now because we do have two of the top tackles in the entire league, and they're both being paid requisite money, which hopefully Darrisaw gets. I mean, he's getting his 5th-year option, but that's another big contract that's going to come up. So, yes, as a fan and as somebody who likes this team and likes the players and follows it on Twitter and all the social media and everything when they put these guys out, I like to like the guys, you know? I like to be fans of the players, not just the logo and the team. But yeah, and I think you'd agree, it's realistic to think like some of these guys, you can't have them every year. They got to bounce around.
Yeah. Yep. And again, that's kind of how it is in the league right now. I mean, Sam Darnold is a Viking. If you would have told me that 2 years ago, I'd have been like, no way. There's no way that guy's a Viking. But here we are. And I mean, in my mind, there's no way Kirk Cousins isn't a Viking.
Yeah, it's still weird to think.
So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to keep pace with what goes on in the league and all the trades and acquisitions and draft picks. But at the end of the day, we're not the GMs, and we trust in them to get the right guys on the field and put together the best possible team to hopefully go out and win a championship.
Yeah.
So.
And just to circle it on back with Van Roten here, he kind of reminds me of the guy from 2019, Josh Klein. Same position, offensive guard. He, had I think at the time Josh Klein was signed by the Vikings. He'd played for the Patriots for a handful of years and the Titans for a couple of years. And then immediately he was a free agent signing by the Vikings, got like a 3-year contract, was immediately announced as a starter, even though at the time he was quote unquote a little bit older at like 29 or 30. But he played really well for that season, 2019. And then I think it was injuries. I think he just got beat up so much that ultimately the Vikings cut him after that year, and he never latched on anywhere else, and he retired like within a few months of that. So, but when the Vikings signed him, I mean, he was a serviceable, very good guard, and you didn't have to worry about his play. He was one of the bright spots on the line that year. So Van Roten kind of reminds me of that. Interestingly enough, right now, they're both the same age. They're both like 34 right now. So definitely injuries for Josh Klein was why he's not still playing. But I think Van Roten would be a good patchwork player for 1 year, maybe 2, depending on how it worked out.
Yeah, and to be fair, I wouldn't be opposed to a player like him.
Sure.
Especially because, we convert one of the dark side to the good guys.
It's been a few years since he played for the Packers.
I know, but
the Vikings do seem to like signing former Packers for some reason.
It's always good when we can get somebody into purple and gold rather than that green, that ugly green. But one more player on this list.
Yeah.
And surprising, actually, because this name to me, one, didn't even know he was still playing. And two, he's kind of a juggernaut player. Calais Campbell.
Yeah.
And defensive tackle is a position that the Vikings need to address. And I don't know.
Who do they have right now after Harrison Phillips?
I think that's it. I mean, you've got a few guys. You've got Phillips. They drafted Levi Drake Rodriguez.
Oh, yeah, who they're really excited about, but still 7th-round pick or whatever it is.
And I think Taki Taimani was a free agent or a undrafted free agent.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, is Tillery gonna play on the inside, or is
I
he
forgot
an
about
outside guy?
him? Yeah, I don't know. So with this 3-4 defense, I always get confused on who is a defensive tackle or like a defensive end or however they categorize that. But I think Tillery, I don't know. I'm not sure. Is he the guy that's going to play in the middle? I'm not sure.
Well, they have him listed right now as DL on the website here. which means defensive lineman.
Mm-hmm.
But like, for example, let's see here.
Oh, man. Still looking for defensive linemen here. But yeah, either way, I think Calais Campbell, he's bounced around a few teams the last handful of years, but I think he's still playing pretty well. Like, he gets his chunk of change. He's also not going to cost $30 million at this point. I think Dustin Baker points out that he was drafted the year after Adrian Peterson was. So just to kind of put that into perspective on his age a little bit. What'd you say he was, 36, 37?
He's 37. He'll turn 38 on September 1st.
Oh, so essentially for this year, he's a 38-year-old player. But, I mean, if you're still producing and if it's something you can add him to a rotation and not necessarily have to have him play every snap, like that could be...
And he's a starter. I mean, other than his rookie season, he didn't start any games, but he played in 16 of them. Since then, he's started pretty much every game that he's played in. For the Cardinals, for the Jags, for the Ravens, and then last year for the Falcons. Last year for the Falcons, he started and played in 17 games.
Yeah.
So I'd have to dig a little deeper to find like his snap count, but you don't start a guy just on posterity alone. Like, you're Calais Campbell, so we'll put you in for a couple of plays and then pull you out just to say we started you. That's not how it works. So to start 17 games, that's a big deal as a defensive lineman.
Yeah, absolutely.
At 37 years old last year.
Absolutely. So yeah, he would definitely be an upgrade, a good piece added to the Vikings. He won't break the bank, but he's going to get his payday.
He's going to be more of that edge guy because he's played defensive end most of his career for the Cardinals and the Jags, and then even the Ravens.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he'll be on the outside. He's one of those quarterback hunters
for sure. But I also know Dustin Baker, if you've watched any of his stuff at all in the last couple of months, like, he does frequently drop Calais Campbell's name as like, yeah, it'd be a good get for the Vikings. So I tend to agree with Dustin Baker's takes. He's usually correct. So same with this one right here. I'd be excited. Honestly, I'd be okay if they signed any of these guys, as long as it didn't, break the bank for any of them, which in May, if you're signing a free agent, it's probably not going to break the bank. So yeah, I'd be excited if they made any of these additions. And if they didn't, then hopefully it's because they really like one of the rookies or one of the Blake Brandells of the world or somebody they brought in as a free agent. So we'll see.
Well, the Vikings have $16.6 million in cap space right now. So a little bit of money to play with for this current year.
And I don't know if that includes, because they signed like 3 draft picks the other day. And obviously JJ still needs to sign. Dallas Turner still needs to sign. They're both first-round picks, so they're not going to be – I mean, no rookie right now is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars right now, but they're still first-round picks. Like, they're going to – they get a substantial payday as well.
So, yeah, and that'll be really interesting, too, to see how those two players develop.
Yeah.
And
the Vikings are in good hands right now. And they didn't just pay Jared Goff $170-something million guaranteed for a 4-year extension. So
$53 million a year.
That's wild. That is wild. Good for the Lions. If Jared Goff,
good for Jared too.
Yeah, good for him if he figured something out. Obviously, they had a great year in this past season, and they're set up to be really good for a while. But I don't know. I'm still not convinced.
It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.